Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. So before we get started with today's video, I just wanted to encourage you guys that if you have any more questions for me when it comes to the 10K subscribers Q&A video I'll be doing, you can leave the questions under this video as well, so your questions can get featured. I just want to say that I'm insanely grateful for you guys. We haven't hit the mark yet though. We are very close, so I won't get emotional yet, won't have a speech yet, but I wanted to say that you can enter your questions if you want. So for today's video, we're gonna be doing the best decks tiered list, but I shrunk it and I compiled only about 20 decks because I wanted to feature the decks that you guys are probably going to be encountering if you go to an event maybe this weekend, if you go to any regionals or whatever it may be. I think those decks are going to be there, they're going to be represented, and I wanted to mention all of them and give you a bit of an idea as to the power level of those decks and what you really realistically can expect. And yeah, like I said, we have about 20 decks and the usual tiers. So as for the first deck, I think Branded is most definitely tier 1. It is literally insanely strong, insanely consistent, and just so rewarding to play because it is quite a complex deck to really understand and pilot it to perfection. So I think it's most definitely a tier 1 contender. Nothing has been hit on any ban list yet when it comes to Branded, so there's that as well. I think it's incredible, and I think it is the top contender next to Kashtira, which is obviously also tier 1, but we'll get to that as well. So next up we have Dragon Link. I wanted to feature this deck, even though I think it's only rogue, but I did see it have some successes at like local and regional levels, so I still wanted to bring your attention to that deck as well, because it is a deck you need to respect, I think, especially if you're playing a deck that hard loses to Bestios, because a deck like this still needs to utilize them, even though they're not as great in the entire meta, but like you need to respect that deck and you need to be aware of it. I think it's only rogue though, because like Bestios aren't as great right now, and the Dragon Link deck itself I think is a bit past its prime, which is really sad for me, but still I think it's only rogue. Then we have Dark World. Like, I'll put it in rogue. I don't want to disrespect it, but I genuinely don't think Dark World is that great. I don't have a lot of I guess faith in the deck. It just feels a bit too RNG for me when it comes to the danger stuff. Even if you aren't including as many dangers and going for other things, I don't think the power level is exactly there. So I don't know, no matter what you say, I don't think you can change my mind. I just genuinely think Dark World is not as great, but still rogue though. So if you have like any interesting builds or thoughts about Dark World or any successes with the deck, I would love to hear it. I just don't think I'll change my mind. So there's that. Then we have the Evo Twin Sprite version, and I think it's okay if we address all of the Sprite stuff right now. I think the Evo Twin stuff is tier 2, and I think so about the Runic version as well, and I think the Runic version might be a bit better. Like the Runic stuff by itself, with the Shizu cards gone and them not shuffling away your spell cards in the graveyard when you're going for fountain effects, I think that engine right now is amazing. And I think the pure Runic stuff, Naturia Runic, Sprite Runic, all of it is just very strong because it is giving you so many resources and so much advantage by utilizing the Runic stuff that I think this should probably be the way to go when it comes to Sprite. But overall, Sprite I think is like one of those decks right now where you can do well with it if you pilot it really well, and also sort of like have a very lucky event. I know it's not supposed to be that way, you aren't supposed to be as dependent on having a very fortunate event, but with a deck like this that really lost a lot with the Sprite Elf getting banned, I still think you need to like rely on having a very good version and just kind of lucky matchups, because the deck itself is quite powerful, but it is struggling against some things, and I think that's quite apparent. So I still think tier 2 is like the perfect tier for Sprite. And also the pure stuff, I guess we can include it as well. Pure meaning like just the Nimble stuff and the hand traps, and then other versions have, you know, other engines as well. So I think Sprite right now is like in this perfect spot in the tier 2 category. I would love it if it, you know, went higher. I'm a fan of the deck. I think it's really sad that Elf got banned, so we'll see what happens with it. As for Kashtira, like we mentioned before, most definitely a tier 1 contender next to Branded. I might put it higher, but it's not due to the fact that I would think the deck is stronger. It's just a bit more represented because the play lines are sometimes quite easy, and what you can really do is like test enough with it where you get good enough where, you know, even if your plays get disrupted, or even if the play lines don't seem that easy in a certain hand, you can still do well. So I think like a lot of people are going to be picking the deck up because it does seem quite easy to pilot, quite easy to win with it. And then also a lot of people are going to be seeing success if they really like test the deck and really grind the deck. So it has a lot going for it. Like the boards that it makes are very annoying, even if it goes only for one Arise card. And also the fact that yes, there's a ton of cards that can counter the strategy. However, you don't really know what the Kashtira opponent is going to be playing around, so you might draw into an out, like a pseudo out basically, in the form of like a sphere mode or something that's going to be dead because they end on only an Arise heart. So it's going to get a bit tricky, I think, moving forward to really counter the deck because different people go for different end boards and different plays. So yeah, I still think it's tier 1. Even though it's insanely, stupidly annoying, you know, it's just here for the time being. And then we have Labyrinth. I also think this is a tier 1 contender. It's very interesting, like comparing Labyrinth to Trap Tricks, for example. Both of them are trap decks in this current meta. And I would put Trap Tricks in tier 2. I think that Trap Tricks is the weaker among the two. And if you go like, if you literally put them side by side or like in a matchup, you will see this very obviously. I think like Labyrinth, just when Labyrinth gets going, it does much more than when Trap Tricks gets going. And overall, like you can literally like go up against Kashtira, wait for them to make the board, especially right now with people playing very conservatively and not locking a lot of your zones. They pass to you, you set 5, you pass back, and then you're good. You are probably good. So I think like it's very strong. Like the cards that the deck utilizes, it's not just floodgates, it's barely any floodgates actually, it's only skill drain, and you can play Rivalry and Gozen if you want, but other than that, like just the basic normal trap cards are very strong right now. And I think Labyrinth is most definitely a deck to look out for and very much worthy to be in the tier 1. So yeah, I wanted to go, you know, and put a couple other decks in this tier list that aren't as great. I think Marincess, for example, should probably be in Rogue. Mathmech should probably be higher, but like I wanted to put Marincess, Ninja, and also Plunder in Rogue. I'll put Ninja a bit higher though, and we could put Dragon Link a tiny bit lower actually. Maybe like this, something like that. I think those 3 rogue decks are very decent contenders. Like Ninja has some things that it struggles with. However, it's very strong right now to set monsters, and it's pretty much what Ninja does. And also it's very unexplored by a lot of other people. So if you go up against someone that genuinely doesn't know what's going on when you're playing Ninja, they're going to have a hard time, like having to read every single one of your cards. I don't know, it just kind of messes with your mental, I think, when you like just have no idea what you're going up against and have to suddenly like adjust your entire strategy to that. So there's that. And also in the case of Plunder, some people may be a bit unaware as to what it does. And with Plunder receiving a lot of ships and support cards in recent years, they have so many different attributes they can go for right now, especially with the new card and with the inclusion of Brave stuff in the deck. I think it's quite strong, and I think if piloted well, can be a very, very nice rogue contender. And Marincess, maybe I'll put it a bit lower than Plunder, but it probably doesn't really matter. I just wanted to include it because it's one of those decks where it goes for the combo and then has a bunch of spots for tech cards, so you can really try to like adjust your flex spots to the meta and try to counter it that way with a bunch of hand traps or other cards. So I think those kinds of decks are really going to be maybe favored right now because you need to have a bunch of tech cards to beat the meta, and by having a deck that, you know, utilizes like a 1-card 2-card combo, then you have enough spots for that. So with that in mind, I also wanted to mention Mathmech. I'll put it in tier 2. It might actually feel a bit better than Sprite, and actually even sees more success than Sprite from what I've seen, because it is a deck that seems quite easy to pilot, and then similarly to Kashtira, actually, like quite easy to pilot, and then very rewarding when you master it and you know how to play it well. However, it is still struggling with a couple things. Like if you aren't seeing the precise thing that you need to see that's going to be able to play through everything, the extenders, circular, all of that, you're going to have a hard time to go up against certain decks because the power level isn't exactly there. And especially if you're going up against something like Bistio, like Branded Bistio, for example, when they utilize a lot of Bistios, because there are still some builds like that present in the meta, then you're going to have an even harder time. And I get that there's like options of playing around the Bistios or even playing through them, but it just makes it even harder for you. So I still wanted to include it. I wanted to give it its props because I should, but it is like struggling with a couple things. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about picking Mathmech up. Then I wanted to mention Rika. I think Rika should go like quite high in tier 2. I think the deck is very, very cool. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's very rewarding to play. It has a ton of different things that it, like the end board is just kind of stupid. Like the field spell is busted. The Rika Princess in the graveyard is strong. You have the trap card, you have the Xyz monsters, like you have so many things you put up. People aren't really aware what the deck is doing, and it just sort of fell off in the tier meta, but it never, like nothing ever happened to the deck. It never got hit, nothing happened. So legit, you can pick it up right now and just continue where you left off before POT format and just use it. I think it's a very, very nice contender, and I would recommend it. So moving on, I think the Runic Naturia deck could actually go at the top of tier 2. Not exactly tier 1, but top of tier 2, I think is very much deserving for that deck. Like the Naturia side of things is insanely strong. The support cards, like, I mean, at this point, like they're not as new anymore, like Camellia and everything pretty much. Like it's just very, very, very strong. Together with the Runic stuff, that gives you enough advantage to actually like maximize the potential of your cards. I think the deck has a ton going for it. It is also one of the decks where it's quite hard to pilot. Overall, Runic variants, I think they're kind of tricky. You really need to know what you're doing, but it is insanely rewarding when you do. So I think this is most definitely a deck to look out for. It should be at the top of tier 2, and like overall, Runic stuff is a bit expensive, but the Naturia side of things is insanely cheap to pick up. So it's also one of those decks where you can just try to grab as many things as possible and then add on top of it if you're not able to afford everything all at once, and then have a very, very decent contender and not pay a ton of money for it, because investing in a Runic engine I think is smart overall to just have it in the game. So I know I went a bit off on a tangent about budget and all of that, but I think this actually go in tier 2. So the pure Runic stuff should probably go in tier 2 as well. I'll put it here, however, because I haven't seen it have a lot of success. So I'll just leave it here. Maybe actually, should I put it below Sprite? No, I'll just leave it here. It's just the basic stun annoying version. And like I said before, with Ishizu cards gone, you can utilize your Runic stuff and just play it if you want. I'm not a huge fan of the deck, because I just think like playing stun strategies is kind of cringe. But that's just me, so I still think it's tier 2 though. Then we have Scareclaw. This one most definitely should go up here. I think Scareclaw is such an underdog right now, or maybe that's not even the correct word. Like basically, if you know Scareclaw is good and if you really respect it, like you know what's going on. And if you don't really appreciate it and you're not like aware of its existence, you're probably doing something wrong, because it can catch you off guard so easily, and it's so annoying to deal with having to like have all of your monsters in defense. Everything's negated. They're playing brave stuff. They're including Kashtira. Like there are just so many things that this deck has going for it, and I think you should respect it. I think you should be aware of its existence, and just at least if you're not playing the deck, like just go through the cards and through the combos to know what you're up against when you're playing against this deck, because it is one of those that really catches you off guard. And why should you be dealing with that if you can just prepare for it beforehand? I don't think it's hard in tier 2, but most definitely deserving to be in here. So yeah, Sky Striker is like kind of weird. I'll put it in Rogue, and I'll put it like quite high actually. Like, I've always been a fan of Sky Striker, and I'm of the opinion that if the Sky Striker player is really good, I think they're able to have really good results. You can pair Sky Striker together with runic stuff. You can just play a bunch of tech cards going second, like evenly, all of that. Like, some of these going second blowout cards are very, very strong right now. So to pair that together with the Sky Striker engine, I think it's smart. And it's also very cheap to just pick up the engine and have it, and just, like I said with the example of the Naturia deck, like, just pick the engine up, because Sky Striker literally has been out for so long. It's probably not going to be very, very meta in the upcoming future, but it's always going to be one of those rogue tier 2 contenders that can shine in a certain format. So I think it's worth having, and I just think it's one of those decks where you're able to do well even if there's a couple downsides to the deck. So, like, pretty much the perfect rogue contender. And then I wanted to include the Tri-Brigade Sprite version as well. I think I'll put it a bit lower. I might put it below all of that, actually. Maybe even Marinces, but I could just leave it here. The thing with this deck is, and with a lot of Sprite variants, we were just talking about this earlier with our friend visiting me and my husband. We were talking about how literally with everyone jumping to Kashtira, no one is really going to go through a ton of hoops to try and make Sprite good. So at that point, like, a Tri-Brigade version is probably much worse, because it did feel worse than the pure version all along. So right now, with even the pure stuff sort of falling off, this version seems even worse, if that makes sense. Then we have Sword, so most definitely a tier 2 contender. I think I'll place it like here, and some of these up here could maybe be interchangeable depending on like their matchups amongst them. But I don't really want to get into all of the specifics, because you should respect all of these decks. Like, at the top of tier 2, I think all of them should be like at the back of your mind. Just think about all of these decks, because you are going to encounter them. And Sorzo has been out for some time, so you probably know what it does, and nothing really changed when it comes to the deck. It just sort of isn't power crept anymore with tier cards out of the format. So yeah, most definitely a very, very solid tier 2 contender. And speaking of tier, I mean, I wanted to put it in the video, but like, it's just rogue. I don't even know where to place it. Like, I could put it here maybe. Maybe put this a bit lower. Maybe even put it below Marinces. I don't know, like, there's some tops, right, that the deck has. Local, regional level maybe, and there's people trying to make the deck work, which I respect a lot. But it just seems like it's not worth it, because right now in a very diverse meta, you have so many different options available to you that you're probably not going to turn to tier and really like sweat and try to break it, when you can just play something like Branded, which is a fusion deck, or something completely different like Runic Naturia or Labyrinth, which is very fun to play, like both of them. And I don't know, like, if you have any ideas about tier and how to make it work, I would love to hear it in the comments down below, but I just don't really see it. So that's going to be it for the tier list. I wanted to, like I said, you know, make a bit of a shorter version for you to really be prepared for the decks that you probably are going to be facing if you go to any events right now. So hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something, and if you did, please make sure to give the video a like, and of course make sure to leave your questions for the Q&A video in the comments down below. I'll make sure to answer them, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.